All right, welcome back to the podcast. Jeff is back this week.
I'm back.
Will did a great job last week. If Will's listening, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Did you said, we already asked you that, now I'm calling you out.
No, yeah.
You've not got a chance to listen.
I missed you guys.
It was great.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
It was awesome. Cameron.
Anyways.
I did miss you guys. I knew y'all were doing it and y'all having fun, and
Yep.
I wasn't, so there you go.
Well, we missed you as well.
Yeah. I don't even know what I was doing on Monday.
Yeah.
It's been a week ago.
Nap time.
No, I wish. What? No, I don't nap in the day. Do you nap during the day? Can you nap during the day?
I can. I don't often
Well, with
get the
small kids,
opportunity.
yeah.
It was
yeah,
actually last Tuesday.
That's not a great question to ask.
It
you.
was Tuesday.
It was
yeah.
Tuesday.
'Cause
Yeah.
Monday we did the thing at Cumberland.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was Tuesday. I don't remember what I was doing Tuesday, but yeah, we had Graham yesterday afternoon, and from like 12:30 to 5:30, and I told Julie because she has him Monday and Tuesday morning this week, and so I said, look, because normally Sundays we just like nobody's there, we just chill out, lay on the couch, her on the couch, me in my chair, and she sleeps and I don't, but it's still just kind of a chill time, you know. I said, look, I'll handle him, I'll take no worries, and so she, so Graham's walking now, of course, and so he and I'd be playing, and she was over there sleeping, and he would inevitably go over there and smack her on the face, and then come back over to me, and she'd wake up, go back over, do it again. But I mean, every once in a while I'll fall asleep, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Sleeping in the day doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I love naps. The problem is when you got kids take a nap, so then you want to take a nap. But for me, like, Sundays are different. Sunday, I'm just worn out when I get home. But most days, I feel like around 3 is when I'm like, oh, yeah, I could really doze off.
Yeah.
That's the time they're waking up from naps. So it's a terrible.
Timing doesn't work.
Doesn't work out. But
yeah. So we woke up early, 6:45, because Graham was coming at 7. And normally on Monday mornings, like that's the morning I like to sleep until like 8.
Yeah.
Just to kind of recover from Sunday, and but yeah, not happening. Or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe Wednesday. I don't know. We'll see.
Nice.
But the idea of going, like if I'm going to nap, it's going to be in my chair.
Yeah.
Right. That's like an old man thing, I guess. But like I can't imagine going and getting in the bed
Under the covers.
at like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
I can.
Really? Yeah, Julie can too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, no, like you don't, that's not what that's for. You got to do that at night. Yeah. No. I mean, if I'm sick, only time I've done that, I think if I was sick or if I've come back from an international trip. Like the times that I've flown overseas and got back and you're just
Jet
all
lag
messed
and all
up.
that,
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I came back from China, man, I think I slept a whole day. It was awesome.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Anna Grace, speaking of that, Anna Grace Vaught got back from Asia, and it was so funny because, she's so mission-minded. Julie said, when I said, Anna Grace is back, I'm sure you're glad to be home, she looked at her mom and went, like, no, I want to be back over there.
Aww.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure her parents are like, because I bet Jeff Vaught, one of my best buddies, great guy. Like he probably cried the whole way down there.
Yeah.
Go pick her up just like I would as a parent. Finally got her. Oh yeah, man. I'm sure she was just because when you get off the field, you guys know this. When you get off, how you're still in that culture.
Yeah.
You're still kind of hanging on to that, and you're still like, I got to go back. It's almost like you get ripped away from it.
Yeah.
And that's been there like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. You can imagine the time that she was there.
Yeah.
And not her first trip. And it's just where her heart is, which is so cool to see. I love seeing our young adults, young people, and our church people as well, man, being involved in missions and coming back with those great stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jeff's listening to this now thinking, man, how you going to call me out on that?
I know. Well, because I know Jeff's one of our
faithful listeners.
Platinum level listeners.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking what our listener levels are.
There should be a prize for that.
Yeah.
We do need it. Yeah.
It's like the honorary. What do you call like the people that were there for the start of a church?
Founders.
You're
Charter.
Charter member.
Charter members.
Yeah, he's a charter listener.
He's a charter member.
That's awesome.
He should get the podcast on Tuesday. Like, what if you got a day early?
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be nice.
That'd be too much. Yeah, that'd be more work on you.
It's
guys.
not possible, but it'd be cool.
It is a lovely thought.
Yeah,
that's right. We'll send you a T-shirt.
Yeah,
maybe.
Nice. Well, we wrapped up the 1 Corinthians study this week.
Oh man, I hate that. It's been such a fun book.
We could have. I feel like with a lot of those, we talked about some of the chapters that we skipped around that we'll get back to. But 1 Corinthians, well, really, I feel like first and second. Are you
referring to chapter 11?
I am.
Oh, never mind.
Not such a fun book.
Yeah, no, it's a great book. Chapter 11, 12 and 14.
Yeah,
is the ones that I will do actually just in a series in and of themselves.
Yeah,
because it really deals with the issues of worship and then going into spiritual gifts and their misuse and abuse of spiritual gifts and things like that. But 11 is just very cultural.
Yeah,
head covering and stuff like that. So it's interesting. It'll be fun.
Yeah,
men with the long hair.
Yeah, men with long hair.
Yeah,
wearing hats.
All the things.
Stuff like that.
But with all these, I feel like we could have spent a lot of time in 1 Corinthians.
Absolutely.
If we would have dove deep into all of it. But,
yeah. And that's the hard part when you cover a book, you're not going to go back to it, probably in that year or even the next couple of years, but there are plenty of them to get to.
Yeah.
66.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine preaching through the Psalms?
You'd have to hit like multiple per week.
Yeah.
But I don't even know how you do that because they're all so different.
Yeah. Even if you did it on Sundays and Wednesdays.
Is that what we're doing next year?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Romans is even hard. Preaching through Romans would be very difficult.
Yeah.
Because we've been trying to get through 6 chapters on, with on Wednesday nights in the summer, and we're not doing well. We're like halfway into 5, but that's all right. It's been good too.
Nice.
It's been pretty, I mean, Romans is just that heavy theological book.
Yeah,
it's been good though. So, but looking forward to the next series. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
We always try to do a series like this when the school year starts back.
Yeah. Yeah. But 1 Corinthians has been good. Kind of a summer series in a way, but it's been really good just to kind of hit the high level of 1 Corinthians. So to kind of wrap it up, it was a bit of a different, anytime you have the conclusion of a letter, you kind of mentioned that yesterday, it's a different type of a message because Paul's cramming all his final thoughts in there and then giving his farewell. But it was a great message. We did have a question this week, a very studiously written question.
Great question.
So I'm not a very studious person, so I'm going to attempt to read this question, and then I am going to defer to you to answer it. So the question is, and this is from an unknown author. I'm going to say author on this one.
Author, yeah.
Professor.
Unity in the workplace is very important for productivity and satisfaction from your career. So how do the business principles of office unity apply to our church staff, and how does it differ? How does the church leadership maintain unity while ensuring equity for all staff and departments and each of their overall efficacy. I told you.
Yep.
Efficacy and growth. What is the church body's role in staff unity and equity among departments? So there's kind of 3 questions within there. Do you want to hit them individually, or do you want to respond to the?
I think probably just respond to the whole thing. Okay. I'll try to hit all of that in there, and if I don't, you guys can jump in, especially on the issue of efficacy.
I don't even know what that word means. So
look that up while I'm talking.
Okay,
when you're not on camera, that way nobody will know you're looking that up. No, I think it's a great question, and I think it. When we're talking about several points in this conclusion, Paul dealt with unity, and he dealt with, because when Paul wrote 1 Corinthians, even though he dealt with a lot of topics, the major issue he was dealing with was this issue of divisions in the church. Mm-hmm. And so he attacked that right off the bat, and then he went into the issues. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll deal with the issues and not focus on the unity piece. So I think from a staff perspective, one of the things I'm probably most proud of over the last 5 years that we've really worked hard on is our staff culture. And I think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle when you talk about staff unity is, 3 things I've always said about work. You got to love what you do, you got to love where you do it, and you got to love who you do it with, right? Those are 3 things that I think if you build a staff culture around those 3 things, then, because the problem with that is you can have people who love what they do, but they don't really love where they do it, and they don't really like who they do it with, So now you've got problems in your staff. And so one of the things that we've worked very hard on is this issue of staff culture, all the way from for every team member, not just ministerial staff, not just ministerial and admin, but all of our team, to make sure that we all felt like, man, we're a part of something that's big. And so those 3 things have kind of driven me, that that number one, man, people have to love what they do. Like that's just the main thing. But then it's our responsibility to create an environment where people want to be, and that we as individuals are feel fulfilled in what we do, so that people want to be around us. And you know, something that I've always talked about is like you want staff people that you may not necessarily hang out with a lot outside of work, but you would, you know, because we're all busy and we all have our friend circles. But man, there's not a person on our team that I wouldn't hesitate to call up and go, hey, you want to go out and grab some dinner tonight? Mm-hmm. I think that's the kind of culture that you want to create. And so a lot of what's in that question deals with building a great culture. So because you have to feel valued, you have to feel like what you're doing has worth and it's contributing to the bigger picture. And you know, you enjoy, you feel like there's like the word equity. You feel like there's equity in all of the team, that all of the team is pulling your load, that all the team feels like that they've got a responsibility and they're fulfilling that. So a couple of things that I think help us with that. When we're hiring people, number one, I think, because that's what it starts with, right? You got to hire the right people. Now, sometimes you inherit people on a team and you work with that, and we've been able to do that well. But like when we hire people, I look at three major things. I look at character, chemistry, and competency. And I would say in the order of character number one, competency number two, and chemistry number three. So when you hire people and look at those three things, number one, they've got to have the right character. Like if they don't have character, you can't really change the character of a person. So character is invaluable. Second, competency. Are they competent in their job? Can they do the job you're asking them to do? And then three is chemistry. Do they fit? Like, do they fit the team? Do they understand our culture? Do they understand the culture of Emmanuel Baptist Church? Do they fit the culture of Lebanon, Tennessee? You know, all those things I think go together in creating staff unity. So that's on the hiring end. From the individual's end, what I would hope would happen is that they would look at it this way. Number one, calling. Like we don't hire people, right? We bring people on the team that feel called to do what they do, because the difference between us and a secular business is that you can go to a secular business, and I'm not saying that believers aren't called to do their work. I mean that people that work in the secular world aren't called to those jobs. But from a church perspective, man, we want people to feel like they've been called. God is calling them to be a part of Emmanuel Baptist Church and to be a part of that team. Like that's first and foremost. Because well, let me go through the three, and then I'll tell you what happens when you get them out of order. Calling is number one. Obviously, number two is competency, in that, man, is it something that I feel called to individually, right? And chemistry goes in that as well. The third is compensation. So I think, like in the church world, I want to hire people that have a calling, that chemistry is a piece, and then obviously compensation is a piece. So when I'm hiring somebody, if the first thing they want to talk to me about is compensation, then I'm concerned about their calling. I think that's different. That's different in the church world and the difference in the secular world. We can talk more about that in just a second. I want to hear about your call. Man, I want to hear that you have been called of God to come and work here. And if you have, man, you know the Lord's going to take care of you. I'm not saying compensation is not important. We all know it is, because we have to live. But that shouldn't be the first thing that we're concerned about. Chemistry should be an issue, and compensation should be an issue. So the question could be, based on how do we ensure equity, is then how do we look at compensation? Something that is very helpful for us in the church world versus the secular world. Well, the secular world probably has this as well, is that anytime we hire somebody, we always look at compensation studies. So there are several organizations out there that do this just for the church world. So they do compensation studies based on a particular job. So it doesn't take into account male or female, doesn't take into account any of those other issues. It's just, here's the job, and here's the average compensation based on your church size and your church town and where you are. And what's really neat about that is that it even deals with areas like, if it's Nashville, it's going to be a little more expensive. You know, it deals with those things as well.
Yeah.
And so we always
fair market value,
value, and things of that nature. So we always rate our positions based on median or higher, right? We never want to be below median, because we always want to do the most we can for our people, not the least. So, you know, as far as who it is, or it really doesn't matter. Here's the position, and here's kind of how it's rated, and here's kind of the balance of where we are as a staff. And so that's kind of how that fits in. So I think the way that we do that we encourage equity and we make sure that we're meeting that is, man, we want to make sure that we're blessing our people as much as possible. And we have a personnel team that feels the same way. So, and I think there has to be balance in that as far as your church, your size, all those things. But all those things are taken into consideration when we do that, when we look at that. And I think Emmanuel Baptist Church does a really good job, taking care of us from that level. Now, when you look at, for example, bringing somebody on, and we look at character, competency, and chemistry, you may have somebody who has great competency, but they don't have great character. No hire. You may have somebody who has great character, low competency, great chemistry. I'll hire that person because we can train them in competency. But chemistry and character have to be there. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you can rate people on that scale. Character is never a question, right? If you don't have the character that fits who we are and what we do, then that's a no-go. It doesn't matter if you're the sharpest person that we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Character's got to be high. Competency is something that you can work with. Chemistry is very, very important. So you take somebody who has great character, great competency, and they don't have great chemistry, not hiring them because the team's too valuable, right? Our culture is too valuable. So there are numbers of things that we look at to ensure that we have, as this person has asked, staff unity and equity among our departments and our areas. And I think something else that we have to make sure we have that I think creates unity is this idea of getting everybody on the same page, believing in the vision and mission of what you're doing, really believing in your values, and everybody's moving forward with that. And the way that I've tried to lead us in that is, and you guys were a part of this, our values, our 5 value statements didn't come because I showed up one day in staff meeting and said, hey guys, here's our 5 value statements. We hammered those things out over the course of a couple of years until we kind of landed on those 5 statements. And I think it's the same way with our mission statement. We hammered that out because we truly believe that our mission is to create fully functioning disciples who know Christ on their faith and make him known. So a lot of that came together by us doing it. So when you have ownership in that, man, everybody's on the same page. Now, here's the thing to unity. And I said this yesterday in church, and I think it relates to the message as well. Unity doesn't mean everybody agrees on everything.
Yeah. Unity
doesn't mean that everybody votes yes on whatever you're doing, right? Sometimes you got to grind it out. Sometimes you may not like it. You may have done it a different way, whatever. But the goal, it's like I said yesterday, I think in the 11:15 service, I said this, and I truly believe this. My heart for our people is, especially our 8:30 crowd and our 11:15 crowd. Man, if you don't like the 10 o'clock service, that's okay. That's fine. But what I want your heart to be able to say is, but I'm so glad we do it because we're reaching people for Christ and we're making disciples. That's okay. Unity doesn't mean you have to like it. Unity means we get the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is, man, we're reaching people for Christ and making disciples. That we're accomplishing our mission. That's unity. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a family, I think in a staff, and all those things, I think that's how you create, what this person is asking. And I think the last question is really important because, how does a church body, what does the church body have to do with that?
Yeah.
And here's what I would say to that. A couple of things. Number one, because I've had people ask me these questions, so it's great timing. Number one, if you don't know a staff member, please don't sit around and wait until they come introduce themselves to you. Grab them and say, hey, listen, man, I don't know you. Here's my name. Tell me more about what you do. There's no doubt that we have people in our church who may or may not completely understand what every staff member does. And we've talked about doing some things to help with that, maybe after Labor Day. So that's one thing is, man, get to know your staff. Man, I know that our staff needs to get to know our people, but there's one of them and 1,100 of you. So you be the one that takes initiative. Please do that. Secondly, I would say, anytime you can, support all of our staff. You may be in an environment where you hear somebody say, well, I don't know what so-and-so even does. you may know, man, step up and support that staff member and help with the unity. Third is, and I think this is important too, is, man, just pray for us. Right? I mean, we're a team of people. We all have our individual views, and we all have our passions and desires, and our goal is to bring all of those together around one table and get everybody moving in the same direction. That's not always easy. Like, we can't even do that with our families sometimes, you know? So we all try to do that together. And so I would just say, man, prayer is a huge part of that. Don't assume that it's going to be good or it's okay or whatever. So I think from a church perspective, man, prayer is such an important piece of that puzzle, you know, that they pray for us. And so you guys jump in because you guys are a part of that staff. You may have a different view of, you know, helping answer that.
I agree. I like the fact that you brought up the aspect of the call, because this is different. You know, I think all three of us have worked in the secular world at some point or another, and it is a different vibe. And so keeping that in mind, we have to default to Paul's prompting for us to respect the authority of the position, to respect the authority that we are as ministers of the gospel of Christ. Obviously, as believers, we're all ministers of the gospel of Christ. We've just answered the call to do this as a profession.
Yep.
And so I think that's so important, you know, when we get irritated or whatever, when we're human, that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
But just to remember that ultimately God placed them as they placed us.
That's exactly right.
It's critical to remember that. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, you know, you could go a bunch of different directions with these, but I think one of the biggest things that I've realized as far as the unity aspect, and we talked about this some on the podcast, is how detrimental complaining can be within any workspace, whether that's a church workspace or a secular workspace, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things I think for us is being quick to, and I think this kind of ties into the church body's role as well. When you hear people complaining in the church body about certain things, like it's much more comfortable and easier to just agree with that, or even just let them talk and not say anything.
Yeah, it's a great point.
But actually calling people out on that, not in a derogatory way, but just, you know, helping to see the light of that, because that's something that we, even as a staff, like there's things that, like, unity is extremely important. We want to all be very unified and have that chemistry that Jeff's talking about, but at times, like, we're not the same person, so we're going to have differences of opinions.
Absolutely.
We're going to have differences of the way that we feel things should go. The goal in unity is that we all leave the room on the same page. But if we leave the room feeling like we're on the same page, and then there's a person who has to go and just complain about something, that person should have a conversation with whatever the situation may be. So same thing in the church body.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I'm interrupting on purpose. To your point, we have to model what we want the congregation to do.
That's right.
Right? Because we're a microcosm of our congregation.
Yep.
So there are times that we don't agree on everything. So don't go huddle up in an office and start complaining.
Yep.
We have to be bold enough to stop and go, no, you need to go talk to so-and-so about that, which is what you're asking the congregation to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, because the last time we talked about it, I read the quote saying that complaining is really a virus. It's not a cure. So to deal with that, be the cure, not the disease.
And Paul even said, do everything without complaining or arguing.
Yep.
I mean, it is a command.
Yep.
So we should pay attention to that, right?
Absolutely. So it may seem like a very harmless thing, but when it, even just a little simple one, when someone has the room to complain about something small, they're just going to keep going and keep going, and then get people along with them, and it can create a sore spot in the midst of any congregation, staff, whatever it may be. So,
right.
Which is the enemy's desire, right?
100%.
Absolutely.
That's his ultimate goal, is just to keep us in chaos. And you alluded to the fact yesterday that opportunity is accompanied by opposition.
Absolutely. That's right.
And that is a key source of opposition, is just that turmoil.
It's internal complaint.
Lack of peace.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, well, absolutely. And let me say one, before we get off this, let me say one more thing about, because Patty made me think about this in her comment. When you talk about the calling has a lot to do with compensation. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When we as individuals have, agreed with the Lord that He's called us into ministry. We're agreeing to basically be compensated less than what the world would compensate us in that similar role because of our heart and passion to be involved in ministry, right? You're a communications director for our church, and there's no doubt that in the secular world, communication directors make more money than you do. But a part of your calling is that I've been called to serve the Lord, and I'm going to do that in a church, right? Mm-hmm. The same way for you, the same way for all of us. I mean, all of us have skill sets that could be exercised in the secular world, and if that was our goal, we could make more money than we do now. Mm-hmm. But we all know that's not our goal. A part of our calling is to say, Lord, I'm just going to trust you that you're going to provide for us. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't. John does a great job of doing market studies and making sure that we're doing all the right thing for our people. So it's now where you have to be careful is because I've been in churches like this where they go, well, man, we can pay them less because they're called of God. And I don't think that should ever be our posture.
Right.
I think our posture should always be, man, let's bless them as much as we can so that they don't have to worry about things and focus just on what God has called them to do within reason. So I think there's a good, healthy balance there. But a part of our call is realizing that, like, that's who we are. That's a part of what we're willing to sacrifice in the world to say. But let me say this, guys, and you guys have. I'm just older than you all are, so I've just experienced this more. I've never been in an environment of ministry where God didn't take care of you in amazing ways, in unusual ways. That unusual blessing. It's something as simple yesterday as Georgina showing up with a pecan pie. And you go, man, y'all still do that? You better believe it, And what a blessing it is, for somebody to pull up in my driveway and say, hey, made you a pecan pie. Mm-hmm. Like, that's awesome, And it's something like that. It's just those times in our lives when we see God blessing us when we have those needs, that it's just always been a pretty amazing thing. So, I think that's a great question. I think it's something that we really focus on. And we'll always have to, because if you don't have unity in your staff, then, man, you have a siloed situation where nothing is really going to be accomplished.
Yep, absolutely. And that's true, because Taylor Swift asked me to go on tour before I came here.
Boom.
But I was like, I feel called to ministry, so I need to go.
No doubt about it.
I could have been the next Justin Bieber, but here I am.
Maybe. You could have been. No, I could see you in the Jonas Brothers band.
Oh, no.
Because you kind of look like one of them. What? Well, I mean,
we're moving on. No. We're moving on past that. I'm not.
I'm saying the black hair and the beard and stuff.
Not feeling unified at this moment.
Yeah.
The unity just went out the window.
Chemistry.
I mean, I could have said NSYNC. I mean, that would have been even worse. I know.
Cameron's like, who's that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Backstreet Boys.
I know.
Backstreet.
Yeah. You're going to make me say bad words on the podcast.
NYO. Dude. TK. NYOTK, baby. No. NK. New Kids on the Block.
Oh, okay. You could have just said that.
TB, NKOTB. I wasn't even close.
No, you weren't.
Wow.
Hey, bro, XYPYZ, man. Yeah.
LMNOP. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I got to quit with the cultural references.
Tarzan is one of my favorite soundtracks, but I recently found out NSYNC's on it, and it's just ruined Trash in the Camp for me.
NSYNC had a couple. I mean, they were after my time, but they had a couple of decent songs.
Trash in the Camp's the only one.
Do you know that the lead singer for NSYNC is it? No, Backstreet Boys. Never mind. He went to my high school, but no.
Oh, that's cool.
Brian.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. But you know what he did though? He lost his voice.
Oh, that's sad.
Like he literally can't sing the songs anymore.
Wow.
And he's a younger guy.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right.
Of course, so did Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler blew his voice out.
Well, he's singing up in the
he's like in his 70s and still yeah. You know what he did? He fractured his larynx.
That sounds right.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, like this thing right here, like I guess that's this, right? Your Adam's apple is your larynx, right?
Yeah.
So I guess putting so much pressure on it over time, it just...
That's wild.
Isn't that crazy?
So how is he doing the farewell tour?
Hey, can you tell us it's in the afternoon? Can you tell us in the afternoon? Pew, pew, pew.
I'll take the blame for that. I started
on track. No. My bad. Yes.
All right.
It is 2:12,
and we've gone 30 minutes and got to one question.
Our little cops in our heads have gone off duty.
They went, they're long gone. All right, so getting into the message. 30
minutes later.
Yeah, I think today we can just kind of go through the points that you had in the message.
Quick. Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of dig into them a little bit. So in 1 Corinthians 16, you kind of had a title, and then it was just all main points, sub points.
It is, man. Yeah, because when you're really trying to exposit a conclusion,
right, it's tough.
So think about that. Think about if you're writing me a letter and you're kind of doing your conclusion. It's kind of hard to go in there and
dissect it.
Yeah, dissecting your conclusion. But anyway,
yeah. So kind of first point from Sunday was always live in the reality of the balance. Kind of dig into that one a little bit for us. I know for Paul and for Corinthians, it may have been a little different in their time, but we have to deal with this too. So what does that mean for us to live in the reality of the balance?
Yeah, I think what struck me with that is coming out of 15 right into 16. Now, what's interesting about that, and I tried to make this point, is Paul would have been writing on a scroll.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's not putting, okay, now I'm starting chapter 15. This is verse 1. This is verse 2. We did that much later. So Paul's just writing, tick, tick, tick. So can you imagine his mind going from the detail of the resurrection chapter? Like there's just not, it's the definitive chapter on the resurrection, period.
Yeah.
To, hey, now don't forget about the offering for the saints.
Yeah.
It's kind of like us a minute ago, like jumping around. But he just kind of went right to that. Yeah. And you go, man, did you really just go from pulling me out of the clouds back down to the ground and saying, now you're going to have this amazing heavenly body. Hey, but don't forget you got some brothers in Jerusalem who are struggling to eat.
Yeah.
So, man, be sure and pull your money together.
Yeah.
So I think to me, there's just that balance of, yes, the more we dig, the more we are discipled, the more we grow. For some people, the more they want to dive into, man, the deeper things of theology, that's awesome. But if it ever pulls us away from the ground, we've missed it. We've missed the point.
Yeah.
While we're here, it's boots on the ground. The work is on the ground. The work isn't in the clouds.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we can spend our time in the clouds and really think the work is about figuring out stuff in the clouds.
Yeah.
When we got people around us who are struggling to eat.
Yeah.
Teenagers who are, as I had a conversation last week, teenagers aging out of DCS and with no place to go, stuff like that. And so I think Paul is just kind of reminding us, hey, man, live in the balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Second point was pay attention to opportunities, but expect opposition. I think that's one that we deal with often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with what we're walking or about to kind of walk into and already dealing with. Satan's going to want to come and steal, kill, and destroy like he does. And so when you made that point yesterday, someone sitting beside me leaned over and said, I had an example of that today because apparently I think the Life Center and maybe somewhere else the air was out, so it was blazing hot.
Gosh.
But again, back to complaining, it's easy to get into a complaining mode there, but keeping our eyes fixed on what our purpose is. But that's huge for us. How do we, what are some, like, how do we practically live that out to pay attention to opportunities without, or while expecting opposition?
I think the biggest thing that I see with people is they're surprised by opposition.
Yeah.
And so I think that's hard because, we think in our mind that, man, God is blessing. It's all rosy. It's all great. And it's going to continue to stay that way. Mm-hmm. And that's what it means to be a Christian. But at the end of the day, that's not our life. At the end of the day, and I love Paul. He says this. He says, I'm going to stay in Ephesus because I've got this amazing opportunity, but they're opposing me, right? Mm-hmm. Like he knew that there was opposition there. He's deciding to stay in. So it didn't surprise him.
Yep.
But I love that he's letting them know, hey, listen, man, with opportunity comes opposition. So don't think that because you've got a great opportunity. I don't know if it was this point or one later I made the comment that Satan's not active in a dead church.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Satan is worried about the church that's really trying to make disciples and make an impact in its community. Yep. And I think as we move forward in that, man, so to be practical, Cameron, don't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's going to come, when things pop up, when troubles come up, when know what they are, men know that we've got an enemy that wants to steal, kill, and destroy. Right. So how can he do that? He can discourage us, and then we back off. And then when we back off, then we get further and further away from, the fighting line.
Yeah.
I've always heard this as an illustration of that, is that on the fighting line, nobody's complaining about the food.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just it was an army illustration of, guys in the bunkers that are fighting the battle aren't complaining about dinner, but the guys 400 feet back, they got nothing better to do but complain about dinner.
Yeah.
Right. So the closer to the fighting line you get, the more focus you get, but the more battle you're in.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's what our desire is.
Yeah.
Here's Paul. He's got 2 years in this school of Tyrannus. He's got a place to teach and preach for 2 solid years. Mm-hmm. But the riots were coming, and it got pretty heavy for him in Ephesus. He actually had to leave because of the persecution. So
the next point, getting to verse 10 through 12, be encouraging and do not abuse your authority. This one, I think we could easily take and apply that as a staff or as a church leadership standpoint. What does this look like for the church body as a whole to not abuse?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we could look at that as a staff. I have to look at that. We all have to look at that as leaders, because as leaders, as parents, as husbands, as wives, whatever, we all find ourselves in these positions of authority. The question is, how are we responding to authority? Right? So if we understand, and I think this is the way, I don't know if you guys have watched the last season of Chosen yet, but in it, I won't give you spoiler alerts. Well, the Bible's the spoiler. The Bible's a spoiler alert. Yeah. So, hey, guess what happens, dude?
You never believe it.
Yeah. There's people that need to be fed. What's going to happen? I don't know. Yeah, that was not good. But Gaius, it shows the story of Gaius, which is a Roman proctor, soldier, and his daughter's healed. And what's amazing about that is his comment to Jesus is, I too am a man under authority, and I'm a man in authority, and I know that when I speak, things happen. Right? So he understood his authority, but he also understood he was under authority. And so he said to Jesus, he said, whatever you say, it's going to happen. It's an amazing, we've read it, but to see it, it's pretty cool. So I think in all of that, we got to understand a couple of things. Not only do we have authority, but we're under authority.
Yeah.
Right. So don't forget that, it doesn't matter how much authority you think you have. We're always submitting to Christ as our authority. So there's some humility in that, and we should use our authority to lead people, not to get what we want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not to push people in directions because we want them to go that direction. We've got to be disciplined enough to use our authority to only push when it's moving us. I used to say this when I was in leading publishing at Lifeway for student ministry, and we were doing this thing called, you guys, I've talked about Field before. We were making videos, and there were some older ladies that were doing it for us, and they wanted to get edgy. It was awesome, man. So we would talk about it, and they would have scenes that they would want to, it's going to show this, it's going to be, and I'd always tell them this. I said, listen, don't be edgy for edgy's sake. But if being edgy helps you get to the point that you want to get to, then it fits. Now that's within reason. We understand that, but don't throw something out there just to. And I think it's the same way with leadership. Don't throw your leadership around just because you can.
Yeah.
Don't abuse that authority. Paul could have said, Apollos, you're going.
Yeah.
Without question, those guys understood kind of where they stood with Paul. But Paul trusted the Holy Spirit in his life. He said, you know what, he's not, Apollos, Corinthian church wanted him back. And I don't know that this is why Apollos didn't go back. But I want to believe that Apollos knew what was happening because he had been there, that people were gathered more toward him, drawn more toward him than they were Christ. So Apollos said, you know what, I'm not going to jump back into that. That needs to settle down. They need to get this teaching Paul's writing them, because Paul was just writing that when Apollos, wasn't going to go back. So what if he would have, now Apollos could have done this. They liked me that much? Wow, dude, I'm going back, because I want to create the Apollos Club. I want them to follow me and not Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, he could have ran back and done that. But Apollos said, no, I'm not going back. So Paul trusted the leadership of the Holy Spirit in his life.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hardest things we have to do is, even if it means, man, it's not really what I would want, but man, I'm going to trust the Holy Spirit's leading your life on that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's easier to do it with people you work with. It's a lot harder to do it with your family, especially with your kids,
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think those are just, man, be encouraging. And I think that's what he was encouraging the church to do. Man, love on Timothy, encourage Timothy. And I think that's something our church needs to understand too. We as staff people need encouragement just like you need encouragement. So he's telling the church, make sure Timothy has nothing to fear from you. Like, I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, obviously they were an intimidating group of people. I think the Corinthian church, very gifted, very, noble people. And so I could see that. Here's Timothy, this young guy rolling in. Man, they're not going to listen to me, So hey, be encouraging.
Yeah.
But then Paul's illustration of, man, don't abuse your authority. Just because you have authority doesn't mean you have to throw it around.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've kind of dug into the next one a good bit already, but point number 4 is protect the unity of the body at all costs.
Yep.
I wanted to read these 2 verses that this came out of. Verse 13 and 14 says, be watchful and stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. So yeah, I think that's a huge one for our church, to protect the unity of the body of Christ at all costs. And again, like we talked a lot about the unity of the staff as a whole, but the unity of the church as a whole, the body, I think is equally, if not sometimes more important than the staff.
Yeah.
Because there are how many, maybe 20 of us, and there's 1,100 of the church body.
Absolutely.
And so you think about the impact, or just the spread of the people that come on this campus every Sunday morning.
Right.
In this community, if there's not unity there, how dysfunctional that can look and be in this community if it's not unified. So again, to get practical, we've talked about it some, but just what are some practical ways for our we kind of answer the question of what's the church body's role in the staff's unity, but what are some practical ways for the church body as a whole to remain unified together?
Yeah, well, and that's so important. And I think Paul, I mentioned in the sermon that those are, he uses these military terms, and they're really 4 imperatives. I mean, when he writes those, the way Greek language would have been written, they would have understood it was like boom, 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 boom. Like Paul's making these imperative commands. You do these things.
Yeah.
But it's kind of wrapping up the entire letter, because the entire letter started with, I hear there are divisions among you.
Yeah.
And then he goes into the whole letter, right? So he breaks it down, but he starts with, here's the reason I'm writing you guys. There's divisions. So he ends it with this command.
Yeah.
Hey, be on guard, be alert. Be alert for what? The divisions. He's going back to the reason he wrote the letter, because there are divisions among you. So we've always got to be on guard. And I think each individual church member, you mentioned it, Cameron, there are going to be, because we know that, number one, Satan plants weeds in the body, right? Just for the purpose of causing disruption. So we have to, as a body, have to be willing to deal with that. Secondly, if you're around those people, man, it's your responsibility as a believer that loves Jesus and his bride enough to say, no, that's not correct. And that needs to stop. Or you need to call, whoever and ask them about that, I think it's those types of things that if people would be willing and not, and here's the thing that our church people have to understand. And I can't forget how people used to say this. I'm just going to say it this way, but it's probably not the way it was said. Silence is affirmation. Okay, so Patty comes to me and she's complaining about you, and I say nothing. Does Patty walk away and feel like I have agreed with her or I've disagreed with her?
Agreed.
That's right. Because silence is affirmation. So we got to be careful. Say, well, I'm just not going to say anything. Well, if I complain to you about something and you don't say anything, dude, I'm in. Like, I'm taking that as a win.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got to be willing to say, no, I don't agree with that. As a matter of fact, now I've done this with you guys before. Maybe if you've been around me, because this is how I operate. Not about complaining, just about dealing with stuff. Like if somebody comes to me and starts complaining about somebody, and I'll say, you know what, that's not correct. Let's get them on the telephone. Hang on a second. And I'll call them right then. Put them on speakerphone. Hey, man, okay, well, I'm with so-and-so. We've got this issue that we need to talk about. You good? Yeah. All right. You know what that'll do? That'll stop people from coming to you with complaints. I can promise you. I'll never forget I did that over, I can't remember what issue it was, and had a person with me, and I said, you know what? Have a seat right there just for a second. Beep, boop, 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 beep. Hey, so-and-so, you got a few minutes? Man, I got a question about something that you shared. You good with that? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, hang on a second. And we just talked it out. Never heard another word. because that's how we're supposed to deal with those things. That's only the fair and the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised, going back to something we said earlier, when those things do pop up. Mm-hmm. It can be so discouraging if you're not careful when you hear things like this pop up and you go, oh man, I thought we dealt with that already. You think it's going away? It's never going away.
Yep.
Man, you know, we may be, man, the Lord blesses us. We're at 2,000. We're at, you know, I don't know how we could get to more services, but anyway, you know, we're just doing what we do. And you know what? There's still going to be people complaining about something. That's just the nature of our enemy.
Yep.
So don't be surprised. Don't be discouraged, but deal with it.
Yep.
And I think that's protecting the bride.
Yep.
Right? So, and I think that's why Jesus uses that language with us, because we have to think about it relationally and not organizationally. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go down to one of the later points. Remember, we're a family, not an organization.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about this as the bride and not the church.
Yeah.
Now, we are the church, so I'm not talking about the ecclesia. I'm talking about the church as an organization. If you're just talking about an organization, then you're going to talk about the church like you talk about the place you work. Because you can complain about the place you work, right? I mean, it's just an organization.
Yeah.
Jesus wants to think about this relationally.
Yeah.
This is the bride. So when we talk about and complain about our church, we're complaining about somebody's bride. Now, you want to get on my bad side? Talk about my wife. All right? Any of us would feel that way. And we should, because we are very protective and should be very protective of our brides, of our wives. Our church ain't going to do that because they love Julie more than they love me, which is fine. But
that's true.
It is true, 100%. But, I mean, that's exactly like Jesus protects his bride. And he knows us, that he still loves us.
Yep.
And so I think if we think about it relationally and not organizationally, I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I personally tend to be more of a people pleaser. I don't like confrontation. I don't like that just sphere. So I, in the past, have tended to be more on the passive aggressive side. Lately, though, that's completely shifted to a point of like passive aggressive just drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just thinking that you can do something without actually dealing with the person and just hoping it's going to fix itself.
Yeah.
It's completely unpractical.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's been a big one for me lately, is like passive aggressive is just not the way to deal with problems. Like you've got to deal with people.
Well, and I tend to be on the opposite side of that, where I have to be careful is I know that I can tend to be aggressive and commanding. And so like my ideal picture.
Yeah, you got passive aggressive, you got active aggressive.
Yeah, yes, there you go. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, that's exactly right. So now you can say to me, dude, you're being active aggressive. Cameron term. But like my perfect scenario, and I've said this to you guys, but I know it doesn't work with everybody, is you get in a room and you throw something on the board and you just stinking battle it out. Like you just wrestle. I call it going to the mat. Yeah. Let's go to the mat with this thing. Let's wrestle it out. And let's just, and at the end of the day, man, we're sweating and we're bruised and some of us are cut. But you know what? Man, what a great workout. Yeah. And we all walk out of the room slapping high five like, dude, let's do that again tomorrow. Well, not everybody's wired that way, you know, because there'll be some people like, and again, I got into this at Lifeway, where we'll be battling this stuff out, and I look over and somebody's crying, you know, and somebody's like, I'm like, what? What are we doing here? Like, we're not crying, but why are you so mean? Why are you so mad? What's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing. Like, we're just getting after it, you know. But not everybody's wired that way, you know. And Julie's told me, and friends have told me, hey, look, man, when you get at that level, man, like it's like, it could be a little scary, like not scary, but just like, I don't know. I've never probably done that with you guys,
no.
But
well, I mean,
maybe. But like, I don't know, you know, that's not at all what I'm trying to be, but I can like get to that level, you know, cause you're translating all this, you know, and it's just like, but not everybody works at that, you know, operates emotionally at that level.
Right.
And they take it differently, you know, so to where there's passive aggressive, there's also, you know, the other side,
active aggressive,
you know. So you all have permission to go, hey, you need to chill down a little bit, you get a little excited over there. But I think all of that you have to consider again, relationally.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
that's the challenge with marriages too, with you know, having some type of conflict. Like usually you have one partner that wants to just go ahead and deal with it, have the conversation and move on. You got the other one wants to hold on to it for a little bit, process. Time. Yeah. Take the time. Yep.
Yeah. Processing's
and checking our motivation.
Yeah.
Inward or outward.
Yeah. No, that's a great, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I've seen people be active aggressive come into a room, blow up, run out of the room and be gone.
Yeah.
And to me, if I'm not willing to value the people in the room, I don't have the right to come in there and drive the room.
Yeah.
Like you got to value the people in the room. And so, you know, I guess with where my wrestling analogy breaks down is everybody like in a wrestling room that says, hey, I'm willing to get in a round robin and let's go at it for an hour.
Yeah.
Those people agreed to do that. And they were all kind of wired the same way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you're not pulling in, different people. I almost started naming types of people, then somebody's gonna get offended. So, you know, different people who don't have those temperaments.
Yeah.
But I'm pulling you into my environment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, again, it's got to be, and I think it goes back to the same point, man.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to think about it relationally, then you're just driving people and it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And really it comes back to that passage too. Maybe because I said passive aggressive and active aggressive. It's really probably not active aggressive, because I think if aggressive is in the term, you're probably missing the point. If you're passive aggressively trying to solve a problem, if aggressive is driving it, you're missing the point. If you're just trying to be actively aggressive, you're missing the point. So it's really active love at the end of the day, which is how that verse ends out. Let everything you do be done in love.
Yes.
So dealing with problems, dealing with those in love is the key to actually.
I remember one time when I was coaching wrestling, and Alec was actually on the wrestling team, and he didn't love it, but he just loved being on the team. And, you know, and so, but all of his buddies were on the team at DCA, smaller school. And so all the football players, you know, they would wrestle, and it was a lot of fun. And so I was trying to help them understand, hey, here's the pace you got to wrestle. Like, here's the pace you got to go at. So I pulled one of the bigger guys out and I said, okay, guys. And I told him what I was going to do. I said, man, I'm going to go hard. I said, I'm not going to hurt you, but I want to go hard. But I want you guys to understand, like, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
And so, and this was a bigger kid, and he was a good wrestler. And so I just went at him, you know, for 30 seconds. And they all just like stood there and their eyes were all big. And now, granted, this is 15 years ago, right? I was like, I wasn't 60 years old. And they're all like, and I said, you guys get it? And I think it was Alec that said, yeah, we don't like that. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Dad, I didn't like seeing you that way. He said, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not mad, you know, I'm not angry. I mean, it's just like, that's where you got to be to, and they're like, yeah, no, we don't like that. So point not taken, you know, but just not everybody is wired that way.
Right.
You know? And so I think you have to, again, now the challenge comes in, okay, so how do I take this kid wired a certain way, motivate them to be their best.
Right.
And, you know, and kind of go down the line, which kind of goes back to our original first question, right?
Yeah, right.
Leading a staff. So, but church, same way. I mean, we've got to protect the unity of the bride.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of the last, I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but to kind of wrap up the last four, you got model your life after the right people. It's huge.
Man, I loved, I don't know if everybody else got that. Maybe I just geeked out on doing a little, finding out who those people, like when you get the list of people that Paul listed.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Stephanus, I mean, this dude was the first. Julie's Bible says, like my Bible said, he was the first convert in Achaia.
Yeah.
Some people's, like Julie's translation said, he was the first convert in Greece. All of Greece.
Wow.
Stephanus, the first convert, him and his family. which makes sense because Paul had just gotten to Greece with the gospel.
Yeah.
And so here you got this guy that he's the first convert in Greece. And this dude is addicted to serving the bride. He was so, committed to the bride.
Yeah.
And then Fortunus and like those other dudes, like crazy names.
Yeah.
But man, it just made sense to me. And I can remember that guy setting me down. It was when we were church planners and we were very young. And the guy said, man, find people who love Jesus and have been successful in their life in certain areas of their life. He said, if you're blessed, you find one guy who has multiple, but he said, sometimes you don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But you find out what they've done well, and spend time with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, we've got men in this church, men and women in this church men and women could be spending time with these people. I think it's the biblical model of the older people teach the younger people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, here's what I found, and I think it really does have to be driven by the younger people seeking those people out. Mm-hmm. Because the people that I've had people in this church that are those types of people that are way too humble to go to a young person and say, hey, I've got something I need to teach you. Mm-hmm. Even though they've got amazing stuff they could teach young people.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I've had people like in our church who have been very successful financially who love Jesus, like without question. But they've said to me, you know what? I mean, I'd love to tell my story, but I would never want people to think I'm bragging about what God's done in my life.
Right.
So you know what they do? They don't tell their story. And I'm like, you need to tell your story, man. It's amazing. Like they'll share it with me. And I'm like, wow, like you need to be teaching our younger guys this. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I never want it to sound like I'm saying I'm this or I'm that, or I've got this or that, or I've achieved this or that, I mean, my goodness, we've got a 3-star general in this church. There are not many of those.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got amazing people in this church, men and women both that have do you guys know we have several ladies in our church who have achieved unbelievable military achievements in their life. Mm-hmm. That gets crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you're like, man, why aren't those people teaching young ladies about leadership and about family and how you balance leadership and family? They did it. So anyway, I think that's such a huge point. Mm-hmm. If we can figure out how to get those people together, right? Those people who are doing the right things, discipling the younger men and women. It'd be amazing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And then 6, remember we're a family, not an organization, which you've hit on that a little bit. And then the 7th point, always remember what's at stake. And I love kind of, you mentioned the way that this whole chapter started off. It started off with divisions in the church, and Paul really refocusing, recalibrating, refinding what is the true north. And really, I mean, that's kind of how he ends it up too, right?
What about how the Joker ends that letter? Wow.
Yeah.
If anyone does not love God, a curse be on them.
Right.
See ya. Enjoyed writing you.
Paul. Yeah. Love
Paul. And literally that's kind of what he did, because he said that. Then he went, I write this on my own hand.
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he's exactly right. Like in all of this. And think about that. So think about, he's not just doing that for chapter 16. That's the culmination of 16 chapters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to think how long it took us to get through this. And my assumption would be that like they would read this letter. I need to do a little research on that. And I don't know how we know for sure, but like, did the church just get this scroll from Paul and go, hey, get everybody together. Paul wrote us a letter. And you just read the whole thing in one setting.
Yeah.
Can you imagine getting all of that at one time?
Yeah. Yep.
Or did they go, hey, we're just going to read portions of this throughout the week? I don't know, but and maybe that's what they did. But it's interesting, you know. And then he ends it with, if anyone does not love God, a curse is on them.
Yeah.
Like, don't forget that.
Yeah.
That there's this curse out there that we deal with every single day. And the more I think about it, it's the curse that caused everything Paul talked about in 16 chapters. Mm. The divisions, sexual immorality, you know, the legal issues. They were suing each other, you know, like just the practical stuff, the worship issues they were having, like all of those. Mm-hmm. Hey, don't forget, man, it's because we're all under a curse.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Yep. And those that know Christ, and they've been lifted from that spiritually, but physically we still deal with it. Mm-hmm. So remember that even with believers, as long as we're here, the curse still has effect on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So it's been good. So it's been a great great chapter. I think we could all probably reread it on our own time and kind of remind ourselves of these things, but also dig a little deeper with the Lord. So it's been great.
Well, and you know what? Hang on, I'm going to tell them service planning is still on our way because we're running a little bit late. It makes me want to go right into 2 Corinthians.
Yeah.
Because what's the follow up?
Yeah.
Because Paul dealt with some very specific issues.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do this after Christmas, but maybe a good, to dive into this. But he does a follow up on a lot of these, which is really cool. So not to get too far away from it, that we kind of forget those things, but it'd be cool to follow up his second letter, which is really the third letter.
Right. Yeah.
There's a letter we don't have that he references that. But anyway, a good way to get back at that. So we may do that.
Good deal. That'd be great. Christmas. Patty, is there anything we need to be remembering in prayer? Any high level items? Last week we started.
Oh, that's cool.
I said Patty's prayer.
I thought you were going to get Patty the OBG. Patty, you got anything?
Yeah.
No.
I do actually. So there's a thing called Warm Up Wilson County that's coming our way, and that'll kick off on August 20th. So basically it's a coat collection for those who are in need of a warm coat this winter. And it's odd to be talking about this in August, but in order to be able to distribute these items by October, the collection has to start now. And so what that looks like, and we're going to promote this through the church and through our partnership with Chick-fil-A on this as well. But basically, you bring 3 coats to our Salt and Light Missions house on Tuesday and Thursday at dedicated times, and you get a coupon from Chick-fil-A.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it is, because we've all got old coats, multiple coats in our home, in our house that stay in our closets and we don't wear them.
Right. Yeah.
So those would be awesome.
Again, this doesn't start until August 20th, but you can be gathering now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Good deal. All righty. Well, I believe that's all for this week. Next week, we'll be starting a new sermon series.
Managing Expectations.
Managing Expectations to talk about. But thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
Next week.